So, I finally finished Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. After 50 plus hours and about a month, because I took my time with it, I'm done. And needless to say, we got some shit to talk about. Now, this is going to be my deep dive of the game. Whether you want to call it a review, a video essay, I don't really care, call it whatever you want, but I just want to break down and sort of sort through my feelings and emotions of this game. It's been about 5 days since I finished it. I've let everything marinate, kind of settle in with me, and now I'm ready to sort of go through everything within my experience with this thing and just try to explain my thoughts. About a month ago, I actually uploaded a video breaking down my first ever playthrough of the original Final Fantasy VII Remake, and in that video, I outlined the fact that I have never played the original Final Fantasy VII, or really any of the Final Fantasy games. I have not played any of them except for Final Fantasy XVI. And that my experience with Final Fantasy VII Remake was very unique in the sense that I did not hold this nostalgic value for the series. The same way that my playthrough of this is also unique, because I went into this game not knowing most of the stuff that happens in the original game and just kind of going in blind. Needless to say, I think that makes my review and my notes on this game a little bit unique because I am somebody who is coming from a very, very different perspective on the universe of Final Fantasy. Therefore, my opinions might be a little bit different than some of the hardcore fans. And for those of you asking why I haven't played the Final Fantasy games and if I'm going to play through every single one of them, I just like to say, what's this? Oh, look at that. We got more. Ooh, what's that? Got another one. Look at that. Boom. We got even more. We got so many. Stay tuned, subscribe, turn on notifications, we got shit coming. To really talk about this game, though, I really had to go in the spoilers. So this whole video, I'm going to go chapter by chapter, I'm just going to break down the game, and I'm going to have to spoil some stuff. So if you don't want to know what happens in this game, if you haven't played through it yet, don't watch this video. I'll just say this, I'll keep it very simple if you just want a straightforward review. I loved it. It's a great game, 5 out of 5, go play it, alright? But if you want my complex breakdown on why this game is not just amazing, but also flawed in some ways, and you want my overall opinions that are both going to be kind of, maybe controversial at times, maybe not so controversial, that's what we're doing here. Because yet again, I love this game, but this game also just kind of broke me. Both physically, mentally, and just emotionally, for a multitude of different reasons, both good and bad. I'm gonna break this video into 3 distinct parts, talking about the beginning, the middle, and the end of the game, because I'm a sucker for structure, and yeah, let's jump into the unknown journey and the unexpected journey that is Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. The Final Fantasy VII Remake has one of the best openings in gaming history, as it builds upon an already legendary opening from the original game. The perfect music, gorgeous visuals of the vast mechanical city of Midgard, and then the explosive dive into the train sequence, and the opening that exposes us to the character of Cloud and the awesome action this game is going to have to offer. The opening exposes the player to every emotion and theme that they will experience over the course of the game. Rebirth had a much tougher challenge in the original remake. Because this is a second part of what was originally one full game, it doesn't have like an organically built-in opening, so the game kind of had to go out of the box to bring the players back in and sort of meet that same energy and meet that same standard set by the original remake. And I'm happy to say I think the opening of this game actually sort of accomplishes that in a very weird and unexpected way, but in a way that definitely set the mood and the idea of what this game's overall theme is. The game decides to start with Zack, the mysterious character who in the original Final Fantasy VII is, well, he's dead. Yeah, he's gone. He's not in it. But here, at least in this weird alternative universe, he is alive and well. We get this first part of what would be a long anthology of scenes built throughout the game's runtime to tell Zack's story. But opening the game in one of these sequences I thought was actually really smart. It reminded you about the ending of the original remake and the fact that this game is going to be very different than the original Final Fantasy VII. This is going to be a game that diverts the story and is getting into a very weird territory when it comes to multiverses and timelines. And there are going to be differences here, but overall, it's also going to be a pretty fateful adaptation in a way. After this sequence, we jump right into a flashback chapter outlining the past of Cloud and Tifa and the fall of Nibelheim, their childhood home. This, of course, is due to the actions of Sephiroth, the main villain of the game. This section of the game, of course, is used as the demo, pretty much as reintroducing you to the combat, to the world, to many of the systems that you really got to love in the first game, and the combat of this game is still really great. Not much has really changed. They introduced this thing called synergy abilities. It's essentially tag team attacks that you use with your party members. The combat's very fast, it's very explosive, it feels somehow better than the first game, despite the fact that it's not very different. One thing they did is they pulled the camera back, mainly because the world and a lot of the battles that you're in are bigger, so they pulled the camera back and you have these wider angles. They also added this great thing with Cloud, where if you're far away from an enemy and you just hit the, you hit square, he'll fly across the battlefield and hit him. You don't have to run slowly across the battle to the next enemy. I like that. One thing that did take out, though, there's a lot of vertical enemies, and in the remake, if you were playing as Cloud, you could jump up and fight those vertical enemies. In this game, you can't, so you have to switch to a party member that shoots like Barrett with his gun, or like some of the other party members that are long distance. I wish they didn't take that out, but regardless, let's get back to topic. In this opening section, you actually get to play as Sephiroth, and it does a really good job at allowing the player to get to know the character way more than you got to do in the Final Fantasy VII Remake. I mean, he comes off as kind of a good mentor to Cloud, a caring hero, and a strong fighter for Shinra that you can understand why the country adores him. You learn more about Sephiroth in this opening chapter than literally anything from the original game. I mean, in the original remake. I remember playing the remake, and who is this guy? He just shows up every chapter and whispers in Cloud's ear. It's just kind of weird, honestly. It's strange. He looks dope, but what's going on, man? During this section, Sephiroth finds out that a lot of his past and a lot of his life has actually been a lie, and it turns out that his story is actually kind of similar to Homelander from The Boys. This is Final Fantasy Homelander. This opening section was phenomenal, and probably should have been in the first game, if I'm gonna be honest, because maybe then, you know, Sephiroth would have been more than just this badass dude who randomly shows up every now and then. This opening does a good job of setting up one of the main storylines that we follow throughout this game, and it's this idea that Cloud is kind of broken mentally. He's sort of losing his mind, and he's an unreliable narrator. We learn this because we see very clever scenes near the end of this sequence where Tifa is sort of questioning Cloud's recollection of events. She's saying, I don't really remember him even being there. Like, this doesn't really make any sense. And then Cloud is questioning Tifa. I don't remember you living. You sort of died. And she goes, I am alive. I am real. Look at me. I'm here. Look at my tits. And Cloud's like, okay, yeah, we're cool. You're real. Once the game officially, like, starts, you're immediately introduced to the small city location, and you kind of realize what this game's going to be all about, with these really in-depth locations spread throughout the world that are built extremely well and designed very differently. They all are visually kind of stunning and filled with things to do. In this first world, you're introduced to Queen's Blood, the greatest card game in the history of video games. Legitimately, almost 20 hours of my playtime in this game was mastering Queen's Blood. I am not the type of guy that gets in the card games within games. Like, I didn't do it in, like, The Witcher 3 or in really any game that has them, but this one, I don't know what it was, got me addicted. I liked it. I wish there was some kind of, like, online feature where you could play other players. That would be dope. The game jolts you into the first mini-open world, the Greenland, an open green landscape accompanied by incredible music introduced to us in the first game. I was presented with the base structure of how this game was actually going to work. Find a new land, have dozens of world activities open up, side quests, and places to explore. Essentially, each open zone has a bunch of your typical open world busy work. Climb some towers, fight some groups of enemies, find shrine-like locations. All of these force you to explore the large and detailed open maps that Square built, but none of these activities are completely engaging or ultimately rewarding. Of course, you get to level up your party, you get to level up yourself, and there are some rewards that you don't get through playing the main game that you will get through doing these open world challenges. But overall, none of it was exciting or engaging enough to really reward that completionist sort of mindset. I went into this game wanting to 100% it, and I did about the 3 or 4 first open worlds that this game offered, the Greenland and a few others after, and it just became so exhausting that it's really not worth doing. I didn't love the actual open world side quest strategy this game went into and the design it used. It's akin more to something like an Ubisoft game than something like one of the bigger, better open world games out there. I also have a small problem with the side quest design, mainly because this game has an intricate relationship mechanic built into each character. Essentially, decisions you make throughout the game affect your relationship with your party members. The deeper your bond with a particular character, the more likely you'll see the future events of the game change. You deepen the bond by making correct dialogue choices and conversations, using the new synergy abilities throughout the combat experiences, and most importantly, completing the character's side missions throughout each new open world. Every major side mission of the game is tied to a particular party member. This presented me with a problem that never really got explained to me. I wanted to complete every main side mission the game had to offer in each world, because a lot of these side missions were actually designed really well and had some great emotional beats, but I also didn't want my deepest bond by the end of the game to accidentally be with Red 8. Because of this, I found myself only playing the side missions tied to my favorite characters, a decision that I felt made me miss some of the game's best side quests. That's a small nitpick for me personally, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe you could have done every single side quest in the game and it wouldn't have really changed much. As long as you did the right dialogue choices throughout the game, you could still pick your preferred character to bond with, but because it just wasn't really assured to me, I felt like I missed out, and I would have to go back after completing the game and redo those side missions versus doing them organically as you're introduced to new areas in the world, and that kind of sucked as somebody who wanted to do everything. Either way, once you leave the grasslands, you head to Junon, the first major section of the game, and Junon is an extremely cool location, with the city being this extremely cartoonish, military-style city, something that reminded me of Code Geass for some reason, and under the city is actually this interesting fishing village, being just kind of extremely awesome and detailed in design. I really like this location. There's a lot of cool characters here, and I thought it was a really good place to put early in the game, because it's some of the best location design the game had to offer. It's just really nice. The mission structure of Junon, as well as the side missions I got to play in this area, were honestly some of the best missions of the entire game, and a simple mission of explore Junon and find regiments of soldiers to help you during a parade on paper sounds horrible, but exploring the city of Junon was so rewarding, as there are surprises and entertaining occurrences all around. The actual parade sequence and everything that follows was incredibly entertaining, and overall this section was a major highlight of both of these games so far. It felt like the wall market section of the Final Fantasy VII Remake, which was my favorite part of that game. Honestly, this entire sequel sort of feels like that wall market chapter of Remake, just done over and over and over with each new chapter and each new section, with that same sense of discovery, goofiness, and fun that the original chapter offered. And honestly, if that was the pitch of this game while I was playing Final Fantasy VII Remake, if you told me the pitch is, this is going to be every chapter is wall market, fuck yeah, because it's the best part of that game. The goofiness continues as you hop on a cruise ship, play in a Queen's Blood tournament, which I fucking dominated, and arrive at Casa de la Sol, aka Super Mario Sunshine in Final Fantasy. And my least favorite part of this entire fucking game, this area sucked. I'm sort of kidding, but yeah, this section is just really badly designed. Seoul is a gorgeous location filled with detail, great music, and a lot of things to do. The issue is the mission design around this section, and the things to actually do, well, are just kind of awful. The game forces you to play multiple different minigames over and over, some of which are fun, like this weird Rocket League type of thing with Red, but others are just kind of miserable, like this garbage version of Queen's Blood, which waters down what makes the original game so fun, and rewards players who haven't touched the card game in their entire play. The minigames, you finally get this beach section with tons of fan service, if you know, you know. And a pretty good boss fight, and a lot of good stuff with the character of Hojo and how a lot of characters relate to him. This part of the section was actually good. Finally, the chapter ends, and you continue following the Hooded Men, aka Sephiroth, up a mountain. Also, Yuffie joins the party. Fuck Yuffie. I fucking hate Yuffie. She's the most annoying character in the game. Actually, no, she's not the most annoying character in the game. She's very annoying. But the whole mountain section and Yuffie's puzzle sections in this part of the game were actually pretty well designed and fun to play through after the garbage that was the previous chapter. Once this all ends, though, the game transitions into its middle part. It starts getting into the meat of what this game actually is. I also realized that I really did love this game at this point. I was enjoying my playtime. It took me about 20, maybe 15 to 20-ish hours to get to this point, and I was having fun. But man, this game does get frustrating at times, but I was enjoying the simplicity of it, the story, the world, and I was excited to see where it was going next. The next part of the game has you exploring more and more regions, growing your bond with your party and meeting new party members, and also actually developing the story of this universe. You start with a Barrett Center chapter where you explore his hometown as well as the Golden Saucer for the first time, which will be important later. You meet Kate Sith, a character somehow even worse than Yuffie. More on that later, but Kate Sith, oh my god. Before playing through an emotional mission which explains Barrett's background. This is an awesome section, by the way, and it's one of the highlights of the game. There's a lot of emotional stuff with the character of Barrett and the characters around him. You get pretty much his backstory, and it's really, really good. It deepens your understanding of him and his relationship with his daughter Marlene. Just everything going on there. I love this shit. This is really good stuff. More of this square. You then go to this jungle region, which has some of the best chocobo stuff in the game. You can, like, jump around with these chocobos and fly across the map. I had a lot of fun with these. You also get a pretty cool village location that I found kind of unique. It's kind of better than a lot of the main kind of points of interest that the game has to offer. There's a large section where you're infiltrating a reactor, which has some good boss fights, a decent puzzle, and a really great Tifa section after she's eaten by a giant whale. A lot of good story stuff here. You then meet Sid, who's unfortunately not voiced by Ralph Ineson. Wow, that sucks.
Disappointed!
It's pretty much just here just so he could fly you around and be kind of like a fast travel sort of mechanic. He's going to be a playable character in the third game. Not this game, so yeah. You head to Cosmo Canyon, an awesome desert location with a banger of a theme song. You get to know a little bit more about Red, you gain some exposition of the overall world, and then you play through a terribly designed section with Red and Barrett. And I'd just like to say, anytime this game forces you to not play as Cloud and play as some of the other party members, it's when this game's at its worst, when it forces you to show how poorly designed some of these other party members actually are when it comes to their puzzle sections, their traversal, and some other things. And a lot of their combat, it really hurts the game, and this is one of those sections, and there's one more that I'll talk about in a few seconds that's really bad, but this one sucked, and it felt like filler. The game continues to kind of drag on until you meet these zombie dudes who say, hey, get the black materia so we can die, and also destroy the planet, maybe. And Cloud's all like, sure! These guys fucking suck, right? So they're gonna go get the materia for themselves, so they don't destroy the planet, but also Sephiroth doesn't destroy the planet, but they expose the black materia, so now Sephiroth could destroy the planet? Okay, alright, straightforward enough. The crew then heads to Nibelheim, a section I was really excited for due to the opening of this game and the fact that it's so close to a lot of the main characters in this game. It's their hometown. By this point, I was a little exhausted. The game's formula had kind of run cold on me, and it had been a while since we've had a big set-piece level chapter to reset the pace. Unfortunately, this chapter sort of continued the exhaustion. I mean, there are some good moments early in the chapter, but once you go to Shinra's mansion and that whole section of the game, and Square forces you to play through like an hour of Kate sit, puzzles, and combat, I mean, the game wants you to commit suicide. It is the worst section of a video game I've played in years. It's so bad. They make you walk around doing all these throw-in box puzzles, doing his garbage combat. It's not good. This section almost ruined the game for me. Luckily, the rest of the game is fine. I know I'm complaining a lot, but this section, try playing through it and see how you feel. Please, in the third game, just don't make me do this shit again. The chapter ends introducing you to a new party member, and honestly, I don't remember his name at all. I think it's like Vincent something. Let me describe to you how they introduce him. You see him. Wow, he looks like a badass. Look how cool he is. Then you fight him, and he says, hey, I want to join you after the fight. For reasons unspoken, I guess. You're like, sure thing, because you look dope. And then for the rest of the game, he just sort of lingers behind you and does nothing, because Square hadn't designed the combat around that character yet. Wait for the third game, they say. One of the main weaknesses this game had compared to the first game is it didn't have the ability to introduce these great big characters. The characters that the game does introduce with Yuffie, with Kite Sith, with Sid, these are characters that are good, they're strong, they're interesting in a sense, but they're nowhere near as interesting as in the first game, when you're introduced to Tifa and Barret and Aerith, the main characters of the game, and you're just being constantly bombarded with these incredibly deep characters that are so relevant and so important to every moment of the plot. Therefore, when you get to this game and you meet Yuffie, and she's just kind of like a throwaway, like, hey, I'm here to help, and then you meet Sid, and he's really not offering anything other than, I'll fly you around, and then really when you meet this dude who's just, you know nothing about him, he just shows up and is like, guess I'm gonna tag along so you can play as me in the third game. It just doesn't feel as relevant or as earned as, say, waking up after falling into Aerith's flower pit in the first game, and that whole section with her. Like, there's just none of that in this game, which kind of sucks, but I get it. They're going based off the original game. It's not like they could just create new, interesting characters to introduce here. Regardless, the next chapter of the game is actually really solid. It's the Gold Saucer, the moment where the relationship with whichever character you actually decided to get a deeper bond with actually takes a turn and matters. I can't speak for every single character and every date you get to go on, but in my playthrough, I got to go with Tifa, and I feel like that's the path that is probably the intended one, at least like the canon one for the story. Like, I feel like that's the one the game's sort of pointing you to go towards the entire time, especially with the hard focus in the game on your relationship in the past with Tifa. Please don't yell at me in the comments. I know people get very tribal about this stuff for some reason. It's a fucking video game, guys. This section was really fun. It had a really cool VR play thing that was fun to play through, as well as like an actual Ferris wheel section, which obviously has the most emotional moment of the game with your specific character of choice. I enjoyed it. This is the chapter that's like the getting ready for fucking war part, which I always love in every game or any movie. It's always a great section that motivates you and gets you pumped up for the finale. It ends with Kite Sith betraying you and him leaving the party. Thank fucking God. But now the party has a new mission. Head north and fight Sephiroth, I guess. I think that was the plan. And of course, this is where we get to the final third of the game. We get to the ending, the final two chapters, and we get to that moment. Much like the first game, the final chapters of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth sort of go off the rails. We're traveling the continent looking for Sephiroth, trying to stop whatever evil thing he's planning. There really isn't much more than that. It's just really simple, and that's fine. It's a very straightforward story that allows for the player to get engaged with the world and the characters and understand that there is an overall threat that we have to take down. We've gotten glimpses of that larger story with the Zack scene spread throughout, but the game was pretty straightforward to that point. But then you get to the Ancient Temple, and the game loses its goddamn mind! So in Chapter 13, you make your way through this temple maze. Much of the section is actually really awesome with this unique gravity mechanic, but this section also suffers from much of the game's poor design issues I listed previously, like the terrible Aerith puzzle section, and some of the other filler type stuff, just like that Square felt like putting in just to kind of pad the runtime of the game, I think. Like, there's a lot of filler stuff here. At the end of it, you face off with Sephiroth, who steals the black materia and sends you and Aerith falling towards oblivion. You awaken another universe, where you go on a date with the multiverse version of Aerith, one who somehow somehow is aware of the events unfolding in the main timeline. After chilling with her for a bit, she gives you her white materia and sends you back to your universe. Here, Aerith, who is now acting like Bran from Game of Thrones, takes the white materia and goes to pray at the altar where you know what's about to happen. The moment the entire game has been building towards. And let me just mention this before I get into it. Everybody who has ever played video games ever, at one point or another, has seen that cutscene from the original game. They have seen this character, who is Aerith, being killed. This is a moment that is not even considered a spoiler anymore because everybody knows it. As somebody who had never played the original game, I knew Aerith died in that game because I had seen the scene decades ago in my life. I'm only 2 decades old, so let that sink in. Because of that, this game actually had a unique challenge of how to do this moment, because there's no way you could just do it exactly how it happened in the original game and have it be effective the same way, because everybody knew it was coming. And what made that moment so great in the original is because people playing it for the first time were shocked. They were stunned when Aerith got killed. So this game, knowing it's coming, knowing it's a big moment, would it hit the same? Probably not. Imagine you're remaking Star Wars and you have to come to the point where you have to do the Luke, I am your father scene. It's not going to hit as hard because everybody knows Darth Vader's Luke's father. So you might have to find a new, unique way to do it, or maybe you just do it the same way and see what happens. This game decided to do the decision to at least tease it was going to do something different. They incorporated this scene into the marketing. They've been telling people, that moment, wait to see that moment and how it's going to change. They've been alluding the entire game to that moment. Waiting to see, will you save her? Will something be different? How will the multiverse thing affect this? And it made the stakes of that moment larger than they were going to be if this had been a straightforward remake, because you don't know if she's actually going to die. Whereas if it was a beat-for-beat, frame-to-frame remake, you know she's gonna die. So there is more emotion behind this build up to this moment than there would have been. And I'd just like to say, Square did an excellent job with that, even if what happens becomes a little over-convoluted. So you find Aerith, and coming down from the heavens is Sephiroth, in the same way he fell from the original game, going to kill Aerith. Will Cloud save her? Will she die? Will you change fate? And then as you approach her, you finally swing the sword. Aerith is alive. You save her. I popped off in this moment because I had grown to care about this character so much, and this game as a whole, I was just so happy that it actually happened. Oh my god, you fucking saved her. Wait, what? She's dead? What the fuck? That's when this game gets weird. It's established that Cloud viewed another timeline, one in which he did save Aerith, but in our timeline here, well, yeah, she's dead. You begin the final boss fight with Sephiroth, actually multiple final boss fights with Sephiroth that span multiple timelines. You have Cloud fighting him in this weird, out-of-time dimension, Zack fighting him in his world, and the party fighting him in our timeline. These 3 sections combine at times, with Sephiroth monologuing about the reunion, which I can only assume alludes to this idea of the multiverse combining. The fight I actually thought was well designed, it was fun to play through, it was badass, it was cool, it was unique, there's a lot of shit going on, none of it makes any sense, but I was in it. In the last section of the fight, a version of Aerith appears to help you fight off Sephiroth one last time, only for him to fuck off, because guess what? There's one last game to be played. The final cutscene reveals that Aerith did in fact die, and the party is very sad, but Cloud is still able to see and talk to her. Is this her ghost coming back to talk to Cloud, or is he just continuing to lose his mind? The game doesn't specify, and that's okay. And I honestly just, I don't know. I don't know how to explain a lot of what happened in this final chapter, most of which I didn't even get into, and throughout my viewing of many Final Fantasy VII Rebirth ending explained videos, it appears no one else really got the ending as well, which makes me feel better, because it makes me, I don't feel dumb, which a lot of the times I feel dumb when I play stuff like this, and I don't get it. The ending is extremely complex, dense with metaphors, imagery, Easter eggs, and teases. And ultimately, that's what it is. It's an hour-long teaser for the 3rd game, and a game that will likely reveal to us the actual fate of Aerith and Sephiroth's true plan, which appears to be to use the black materia to merge and then destroy the multiverse with the meteor thing, and how all these different characters will connect to that is still a question. It's very different from the original game, but at its core, for about 95% of the playtime, it's still a faithful adaptation. It's a solid remake. So how do I feel about the ending and the game as a whole, sitting here now, letting it all sink in? Well, I love the ending of this game, if I'm going to be honest, and I might be the only person on the internet that tells you that. As I sat here for a few days trying to theorize about the ending, trying to understand every little beat of it, it finally just kind of sat in with me that maybe I should take the Christopher Nolan approach, the way he said that one time.
I certainly can't claim to have understood it, but I'm not sure I understand it now. But
Does the film need to be understood?
I don't think it does, and I think that 2001 is one of those rare instances where it doesn't need to be understood, it needs to be felt.
Take away the density of information, take away the complex nature of the multiverse and the Black Materia. At the end of the day, this final section was emotional beyond belief, with Cloud fighting to save Aerith, only to glimpse that possibility and then have it ripped away. The emotional gut punch of saving, popping off at that moment, and then crushing shock of realizing that it was just a glimpse at a possible reality was just heartbreaking, and it fueled a need for revenge in that final fight. The final boss fight was exciting, but there's a large sense of sadness throughout, knowing the loss of one of the best party members in the game. And once it becomes clear in the final moments that Aerith is indeed gone, the emotions kind of sweep over. The game actually received a certified Joe Marchione tear at the end. I was broken up about it. It was sad. I felt the weight of Cloud's failure in our timeline, the same emotion that players felt 30 years ago playing the original for the first time. They were able to recreate that emotion, but while changing the moment, but also not changing the moment. And I know what you're thinking. Joe, that doesn't make any fucking sense. It doesn't have to make any fucking sense. Feel it. Don't think. Feel. This is me just explaining bad writing, probably. We'll see in the third game. For the last few days, though, I have felt empty and sad finishing this game. Not just because I'm going to miss its engaging combat, or its stunning worlds, or perfect music, or just the overall vibe, but because I'm going to miss these characters. I'm going to miss Aerith, and the party, and the journey that you were going on with these guys. There's a true sense of loss, defeat almost, which makes the wait for Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3 so much harder. The final scene in this game sets up what should hopefully be one of the biggest and best video games of all time with that Part 3, whatever it's going to be called, Final Fantasy VII Reunion, whatever, who knows. So what now? Well, we wait 4 to 5 years for Square to cook up another masterpiece. A game that promises to be even bigger and better than Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, a game that is going to cover a lot of the original game that we have not yet seen. And from what I've heard, yet again, I have not played the Final Fantasy VII, the original one yet. Stay tuned, you might be seeing something on that soon. But either way, I have not played it. From what I've heard from people that have played it, there is a very, very large portion of this game that is yet to be recreated. And that excites me. There's a lot of stuff that is going to happen in that third game, and we are going to get the answers. Is Cloud losing his mind? What is Sephiroth's real plan? How does all this multiverse stuff come together? Are we going to see Zack and Aerith again? These are questions that we have that I'm hoping we get answered. I hope they don't just do another convoluted thing in the third game. It's just the pain of knowing I won't be able to continue playing this game till, like, the PS6 is out. That sucks. In my original video, I said this, and I feel so terrible for the people that played this in 2020 and had to wait 4 years. Because my ass only has to wait 1 week. It's Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, baby. Let's fucking go. I get it now. I get it. But Part 3 is probably going to be my most anticipated game of all time, besides, like, GTA 6. I mean, I am going to be so excited when this comes out, because this game, it left an impact on me. To sum it all up, I loved Rebirth. It's a messy game, much messier than the original remake, with clunky game design, a boring Ubisoft-type open-world system, and tons of filler. But it's also a massive game that offers well-designed world locations, great combat, perfect characters, a masterful score, and a journey that feels earned and feels worth taking. It's 50 hours that flies by, and although the game at times is frustrating and not always satisfying, the ending left me emotionally stunned and craving the next chapter of this insane story. I loved my playthrough, and although I'm too exhausted to jump back in for a second run just yet, I can say without a doubt that this game was just very special for me. As someone who was just recently exposed to this series and has no emotional nostalgia for it, it's one of my favorite games ever, and also one of my least favorite games ever, because Kite Sith is the worst character in the history of gaming, and he rejoins the party at the end. What the fuck, Square? So yeah, it's a flawed experience, but it's also an experience that I could give a 5 out of 5. I could recommend to anybody because it is an amazing game, and although it has its problems, much like its characters, that's okay. We're building character. Having bad game design's good. We're building personal, frustrating character, playing through some of the shitty parts of this thing. But yeah, if you guys are big Final Fantasy fans, let me know down below. Let me know what I should expect in my teased playthrough of all these games. Stay tuned. We might even be making videos about each and every one of the games, like this one. Maybe. We'll see. There might be 16 videos coming up, so stay tuned. But either way, I cannot recommend this game enough. Let me know what you think about it. Let me know what you think about Final Fantasy in general. Leave a comment down below. Please subscribe if you like videos like this. Turn on notifications. I will see you guys in the next one.